So Fieldcraft Survival is a company that seeks to address modern day survival problems. We have so many luxuries. We've lost touch with basic human needs, like what me and you talk about with like food, water, shelter, communications, all that stuff. And what happens when what is essentially really fragile, our ecosystem, our supply chain, what happens if that goes down? How do you address that? Well, Fieldcraft Survival has sought to stand in the gap for that stuff and say, well, we can do this, we can do that. We separate it into three major categories. We build the communities and we go from there.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to episode 3 of the Backcountry ADV Moto podcast. I got an awesome guest today. If you've followed me on Instagram or even watched the XR video that just dropped today, actually, you will be familiar with Mike Hernandez from Fieldcraft Survival and all of the channels that he operates on, his Instagram, his second YouTube channel that he's got. Mike is kind of we'll say a jack of all trades. The dude is a pro when it comes to overlanding. He's kind of getting into the motorcycle space as well. So he's hitting that pretty hard, and he's able to take all of his 4-wheel overland experience and now bring it into the two-wheel realm. So yeah, here we are. Just welcome Mike Hernandez from Fieldcraft Survival. Man, how are you today?
Good, man. Dude, that was a beautiful intro. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
I love you, man. I'm doing well. Like we been on like the personal side, been trying to hash out some stuff with building a new house, which has been kind of a 7-year project for us since we moved to North Idaho. So super awesome to be able to start doing. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to get nuts, huh? Yeah, for sure. I mean, interest rates are super high, but we're really hoping, since we're going through the VA, which is nice, that by the time everything closes a year from now, when it's all said and done, then interest rates will be kind of somewhat back to normal. So it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Are you following the car race at all right now?
I just seen a couple of like YouTube clips, but I haven't really been like diving into it. What's going on?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I was just curious. I'm in the same boat. Like, I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch the whole thing this year, and I have not had the time to watch it. I know there's been some things, with what's his name, who's riding the Kobe. His name slips my mind right now, but they've had a couple of bike issues with that, a little stuff. But so I'm kind of rooting. I'm kind of rooting for that bike, just because everybody is such a naysayer about it. Yeah, it's been little stuff. I think there was like an oil line that came loose. And anyway, yeah, it's been.
Why do you think people are naysayers with that? You think it's the whole Chinese bike kind of thing, or?
Yeah, what's funny is everybody hates on it because it's a Chinese bike, and I'm like one of the first people to like not support Chinese stuff, but everything that we are using right now is made in China, from this microphone to this Apple computer, stuff like that. So sometimes you just can't get away from it. But with the bike stuff, so I'm trying to look up bro's name here for riding for Kobe, but everybody who's watching this right now is probably like, it's so and so, but anyway, I people hate on it because it's a Chinese bike, and everyone's saying that it's something that's not going to be reliable, but this engine is in like 1 million or more motorcycles in China, right? And it's something that's been kind of tested over time. And people may not know too, they actually completed Dakar last year with 2 of these bikes. They didn't place, right? Really? But the machines finished. Yeah, which is, dude, just to finish is huge. So yeah, man, it's one of those things. Mason Klein, I knew it was Klein, but I could not remember his first name. Mason Klein. So he's a beast. That guy can ride. He can wrench. He can do everything. Like, I saw a clip where he pulled the entire head off of, or cylinder off of the Kobe because he thought it was another issue, and then come to find out it wasn't that at all. It was like something to do with the shifter or something. But anyway, to be able to do that in the freaking middle of a desert during a race, dude,
man, that's another level of self-reliance. But I'm glad you brought that up, because like I've done one race before, like King of the Hammers and Glover did a season of rally racing, and that's the whole idea behind combining it with what we do at Fieldcraft Survival, is that if you can pull a head off in the field or during a race, something that's a little more extreme, I mean, you can be totally self-reliant on a day-to-day basis. So I am 100% supporting anything racing wise in any vehicle when it comes to how it transfers to survival and preparedness.
That is a great caveat, actually. So let's get into that a little bit. So it's still talking about self-reliance. Fieldcraft Survival, they preach self-reliance. Obviously, that's like their main deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me know, or tell our audience here who is either listening or watching this, what do you do for Fieldcraft Survival? Give us kind of the Reader's Digest version of what Fieldcraft Survival is, because I mean they do a lot, and let's just talk about that for a minute.
Cool. So Fieldcraft Survival is a company that seeks to address modern day survival problems. And a lot of people, I think, immediately go to like Naked and Afraid or Zombie Apocalypse.
Preppers, Zombie Apocalypse.
Yeah. And that, although is kind of a product of our times, I guess it's not really reality. So when you look at present day, there's currently riots in southern or in South America. There's hostile takeovers, civil unrest like we experienced with Chaz and all that stuff, in the left coast. But there's also other issues like, how do you procure water during a hurricane? We saw hurricanes this year and last year. We saw natural disasters. We saw man-made disasters. But a lot of
forest fires. Yeah. Hawaii.
Yes. Hawaii. Oh my God. Yes. I mean, there's so many things that are happening right now that because we've led a lifestyle that is, well, we're blessed in this country, right? I mean, and we have so many luxuries. We've lost touch with basic human needs, like what me and you talk about with like food, water, shelter, communications, all that stuff. And what happens when what is essentially really fragile, our ecosystem, our supply chain, what happens if that goes down? How do you address that? Well, Fieldcraft Survival has sought to stand in the gap for that stuff and say, well, we can do this, we can do that. We separate it into three major categories. We build the communities and we go from there. So it's kind of, a real quick explanation of what Fieldcraft is. If you know who the owner is, which is Mike Glover, he's pretty high speed dude. He spent 18 years, special forces guy, CIA, another 2 years, so full 20-year career, fighting overseas, like 10 consecutive deployments, done every school and kind of been there, done that across the planet, and said, how do I, build a community and translate the stuff that we learned to be self-reliant to everyone? You don't have to be, Delta Force or a SEAL to know these things. So after he started that, he then began to build a group of us, which is the directors in Fieldcraft Survival. I'm one of them. We have many, though. We have, Kevin Estella, who leads the charge at the survival director training. We have Doc Jones, who is our medical director. He's actually an Army medic. We have Amber, who is our family preparedness director. She does a lot of women's activities, but also teaching for how to prep your homestead, your home, and children. And then you have me, who is mobility. I'm the vehicle side. So that's how come you see my garage and everything that we're doing. We just did that video, to talk about where we built those bikes.
Yeah, we filmed it in your garage. Yeah.
In the garage. Yeah. So my responsibility is everything vehicle related, whether it's builds, whether it's, we do 4 experiential based trainings a year. You came to me on the last one. You came with me on the last one.
Yeah.
But media, marketing, business development, and racing. We have done some, racing tours, and maybe more in the future as we kind of get through there. But yeah, that's basically what I do for Fieldcraft. Gotcha.
And yeah, that's kind of, and how I get linked with Fieldcraft is we met through Glover, and I met Glover through just being at our store here in Coeur d'Alene, being a dealer for Fieldcraft. I've followed as far back as I can remember Fieldcraft being a thing. I followed it.
Yeah.
So whenever we opened a store, I was like, I want to carry their, their med packs and all the things that you can carry as a dealer, carry that in our store. Glover came to visit one time. We hit it off, talked about motorcycles, and he was like, hey, I want to get Fieldcraft into the motorcycle space. So, and here's Mikey, which
here we are.
since there's Mike Glover and Mike Hernandez, we call Mike Hernandez.
Yep.
I call him Mikey. It's not derogatory by any means. It's not because you're smaller than Mike. It's just, it's easy to differentiate. Yeah. Well, wasn't gonna go there, but you said it. So I'm not a big guy either, man. Like I'm 5'8". Like I'm on the smaller end of people. But so yeah,
Dude,
we hit
it's
it.
funny. It's funny because we
Go
talk
ahead.
about this all the time in survival. Like, I don't know if it's just the current, climate or what, but sometimes people are afraid just to say, uh, things that are reality. Like I'm
Right.
Hispanic, I'm Mexican. I'm not made for like cold, bro. Anytime we're out in the cold, or not, I'm always freaking freezing. But you
Dude,
put me
you
in
wore your
120
heated
degrees,
jacket,
bro.
a heated jacket when it was 60 degrees outside.
I am not made for that. But you put me in a 120-degree desert and I'm good, dude. I'm just like, this is what it is. So I'm small. I'm Mexican American, I'm a little guy. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It is what it
moving forward with that, we built a relationship. You like motorcycles, Glover likes motorcycles, and we kind of decided, hey, since I do make some YouTube videos and I live and breathe motorcycles, how about bringing me on as a
is.
kind of a
Yeah.
contractor to start doing some motorcycle content for the Fieldcraft Survival app. So if you're interested, Fieldcraft Survival does have an app where they basically produce all of their educational content. They launched it this year, right? Well, at the end of
Yep.
2023, basically.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
excellent space to go on, and you can do like a free trial, and then it's a very, was it, I don't know, it's $4 or $5 a month or something, right? Can't
Something
remember
like that.
exactly.
I'm not too
Yeah,
sure.
it's
But
it's
it's
affordable.
an excellent idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
really
it's,
am
it's
proud of it
affordable.
because it brings, like I said, the people that we're talking about and you all together. And it's like a ground up approach where we start building out definitions of things in a manner in which is full production, which is why I really appreciate you. You're totally self-sufficient in that sense, but it'll do everything from what I started out talking about in the beginning. It'll have firearms blocks in there, survival, like water procurement, family, chickens. I mean, all the things that just give you that
Yeah,
edge.
and what's cool about it too is that it starts from the very basics, right? So, and that's something I kind of struggled with when you and I were filming some app
Remember?
content. I was like, oh, well, let's talk about this, and then we were like, well, that's great, but let's really not dumb it down,
Yeah.
but let's start to
No,
talk to somebody who's never even like basically seen a motorcycle before, which
I put it to people this way: like, if you had a 16-year-old son or daughter who is about to drive, how would you line things out? They don't know the rules of the road. They don't got their license yet, or maybe they just did. Where do you start? Because everybody starts from somewhere. And I think for you, who's pretty advanced, and you're like rolling on this. I mean, how many episodes you have now on your YouTube? You got quite a few, right? On your YouTube, you think about
150 somewhere, I don't know, 200.
yeah.
I haven't even looked at it. I have no idea.
So your beginning stuff is way back there, and your audience can go back and do that. That's what the app is essentially for us. Is you can start here, and then it branches out into like our training stuff.
Yeah, and it was fun. I mean, and it really kind of made me think too, like even this YouTube audience, we could really appreciate kind of
Mm-hmm.
going back to basics, and starting to do more basic, even just writing skills. I have a man, my brain's going crazy. I can't wait for the snow to melt here to start doing some more writing training and
Oh,
stuff
I got
like
to come
that
up. Yeah.
that we can bring up onto the channel. But the podcast has been fun too because I get to bring guys like you on and Chad who did one the other day which will be released, which at this time should already be released at the time of recording this video. But yeah, man, it's a constant, it's just constant conversation, constant education. So far so good.
Yeah.
But um let's talk about kind of the way that survival or preparedness kind of goes in with motorcycles or motorcycle travel, because if you're into adventure motorcycles or dual sport motorcycles, chances are you're going to be maybe living off that thing for maybe a day,
Mm-hmm.
2, 3, or more if you're doing a longer trip. Um,
Yeah.
and all of these skills that Philcraft preaches and talks about, they can be carried over into this motorcycle space really easy. I mean, we talked about the best way to go out and figure out what you're lacking or what you don't have for preparedness is just go out and camp. Like
True.
take your bike, load it up, and see where the holes are that you need to fill. So
Yeah.
let's talk about a little bit kind of the
Yeah.
basics when it comes to preparedness for motorcycle travel.
100%. One of the things that we use vehicles in terms of systems in a preparedness like ecosystem is it's an extension of, like, let's say your rucksack or what you can carry on your person, right? So we can only do so much. We have so much capability. but all of us have to travel at some point in the day or month or whatever. So as Americans, we are super blessed to have some kind of vehicle that we can get to. On a world scale, motorcycles are far less expensive, be it used or brand new. And on a world scale, whether you're a third world country or not, they're everywhere, right? So motorcycles fit into that niche of preparedness that is an extension of your rucksack or your person, but it's also on the opposite end, just a little bit of a downgrade from your home. So if you can build a system that's going to allow you to camp, then by default, you have a preparedness rig. I mean, here on my side, you can see I'm actually working on some goose gear stuff in my truck, and I got power in there, I got solar, I got a toilet in there, and I have a lot of
Yeah.
comfortable things, right? But a motorcycle will not give you the same capability. So
Right.
the way that it fits in is it gives you something fast to move, a capability through, let's say, congested areas. But even like I remember I was watching, I think it was the Pan America marketing that Jason Momoa did, and they took
Yeah.
it back to like the original Harley marketing was, it works where horses don't, and that's
Exactly.
what's cool about the mode of transportation that we're talking about is it's such a weapon, to kind of quote our Australian brothers. It's something that one, if you have, it gives you more capability as a single or maybe two people, but also it's just so versatile in the things that you can accomplish in recreation, but also in yourself, preservation or preparedness.
Yeah, and I mean, really, it builds. If you're going to be living off of that, it builds a lot of resilience because you don't have
100%.
the creature comforts that you would have in like your Jeep Gladiator and things like that. But another thing about it too is, like you mentioned, these third world countries, that is their mode of transportation. And you and I watched that one Instagram video where this dude was riding with like 2 or 3 kids on the back, and then he had this 2x8 across like a wing, and he had like his mom and his mother-in-law and his wife. All I mean, dude, they had on whatever bike that was, probably a Honda something. They they
Right?
had like eight people on that thing, dude, and
They really did.
they were going through some terrain that like most of us would be stressing out about. And he's just like da, 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 da,
It's
cruising along.
so
So,
true, man.
all over the world, motorcycles are being used as modes of transportation. And I think we as Americans get really used to having the four wheels, right, to be able to go where we want
Mm-hmm.
to go. But in the event that there's civil unrest or whatever it may be, and you are trying to let's just call it bug out. You're trying to get out of town and go to wherever you have planned. What if there's gridlock, or what if
Yeah.
there's roads are closed or whatever?
Bro,
The nice thing about a
perfect example.
motorcycle. Go
Perfect
ahead.
example is the Ukraine and Russia incursion, whatever you want to call it, the invasion. As people were exiting Ukraine and trying to flee, you have a whole nation funneling into what it was like a 6-lane highway
Right.
by the border going back and forth. And if you're in a big, truck or even a Honda Civic, you're not going to be able
Right.
to navigate through that. A perfect example would be have a motorcycle, you split lanes and you're good, So there's just, yeah, there's so many things that we could kind of talk about when it comes to stuff like that.
And we can take that even further, is like, say, you're trying to get far away from whatever
Mm-hmm.
civil unrest is happening, and
Mm-hmm.
the motorcycle is going to be more fuel efficient. It's going to be able to go more places. So you can take that up in the woods on a 2-track or even a single track road to get to high ground or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Um, so you can throw that motorcycle easily. For most motorcycles, it can go onto a carrier of some sort or in the back of a
Mm-hmm.
pickup and then be unloaded and used for a point A to point B, more efficiently than what a vehicle or truck would be,
True.
or a car or anything like that. And then again, like I said, in case you're leaving town and there's gridlock, I mean, you can jump curbs, you can go across medians, all these things that a car may not be able to do. Your Tesla, these people who are all the people that are buying these Teslas right now, it's a great concept. It's great for commuting, and I 100% get it. But in the event that electricity isn't available at this point, what is your backup plan? A motorcycle might be the
True.
thing. So
Bro, have you seen I think it's an Apple TV series. I think it's called Encounter. I
I've
forget what
not.
it is. But anyways, it's like an alien disaster flick or series TV show. And
I know how
immediately
you're
with
into that
the
Wi-Fi stuff. I mean, it's like
you know,
sci-fi.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah,
What's funny is the family in question, or the family that's the star of this beginning segment, has two kids, a husband and wife. She's like a surgeon or some kind of med, personnel doctor, totally squared away. But they drive a Tesla, and the first thing that happens when the grid goes down is they lose all the transportation, and it becomes, I got to steal a car because I sure as
right.
heck can't go buy one at this point. But yeah, funny
And that's a
comparison.
and that's a real thing. I'm not trying to spread
Yeah,
fear or like make people think that I'm just some kind of crazy. I don't want to be a fear monger or prepper or anything like that. But I'm
no,
trying to.
bro,
It's just think about it, right? Like
right.
if you have an electric vehicle, you need to have something that's not electric as a backup. At
Bro, perfect example.
my house runs on electricity. When the power goes out, a gas generator turns on to give me
Example.
electricity. So
Perfect example. Like Northern California, I just did a documentary on our YouTube channel on this. Okay, Northern California has a huge issue with wildfires, right?
for
And a
sure,
lot of them, a good portion of them, are caused actually by the power lines. So the state or the county or whoever the power that be says what's going on, like what's the wind, like the wind gets in there, or they don't have something maintained or whatever. And the solution is, well, we shut them off if the wind gets to a certain area, right? So you don't have to stretch out to, the zombies are coming or the aliens are coming.
right?
Northern California, their power gets shut off because they don't want to start
Regularly, yeah.
fires regularly. That's a thing, you guys. Like the third world understands that because their infrastructure isn't there. But us Americans who, don't step past our freaking, 10-mile radius to understand the rest of the world or even some parts of the nation actually deal with these things on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, not trying to piss anybody off. If you own a Tesla, I think they're awesome. Don't get me wrong. For what they
Right,
for
right,
what
right.
they're for what there are, that's like the technology is awesome. The to be able to get from A to B with, not having to buy fuel is great, but then you just need to have a contingency. And a motorcycle is a great contingency for that. But we also had talked about, is it the perfect bug out vehicle? No. If you
Mm,
have a family, if you have a family, it's not. You're not going to be able to carry all your passengers. I mean, how
yeah.
many motorcycles do you have to have for a family of five, right? So then it's and
Well, one
there's also
if you got plywood.
right. But then there's also the risk of injury. You're not as protected. You're not in a metal cage, right? So if you don't have experience and you are trying to get where you need to go and you have a crash, that creates a whole nother can of worms that could go wrong. But let's kind of just get back to overlanding with motorcycles, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
using that as a secondary form of preparedness. And so you're
absolutely.
when we go out and we go out and we do backcountry discovery routes or just these multi-day trips in our area, you may not realize it, but you are practicing the preparedness of the worst case
100%.
scenario. So, when you go out, I feel like keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, like
Mhm.
in the event that we had to be out here for an extended period of time, what are some things that you need? And food, water, shelter are going to be those primary things. And I think you and I had talked about this a lot too. Um, I'm to the point to where I can for a short amount of time easily live off the bike with very, very minimal stuff.
Right.
But but in the time in the years that I've done moto camping, I bet I've moto camped 500 plus
Hmm.
times at least.
Hmm.
For
Hmm.
over the years, probably more than that. I've gotten to the point to where I do like to be comfortable, and there's a balance between carrying too much shit and being comfortable. And it's just a matter of going out, finding the gear that works for you, and pack it in a minimal way, as
100%.
minimal way as possible. Like
100%.
you and I had talked about that when on our last trip, where we were able to
Hmm.
kind of, it's a constant learning process. I don't carry the same stuff today that I carried 2 years ago, because there's always new stuff coming out that can be better, right?
Yeah.
And for that reason. So what are some things that you carry on the bike when you go out there in Arizona?
Well, that's excellent. So, and getting back to our last trip, water right off the bat was a challenge as we were kind of looking at some of the vest offerings that I had, but also the luggage pieces that I had. You really are limited to maybe a handful or a couple ways to carry a significant amount of water in the desert, and you really do need water. I mean, even if you look at that video, I was laughing at it when you just sent, because I was legit cramping up at
Yeah.
the
Well, and
beginning of that
let's
video.
let me stop you there just for a second.
Good.
And when I went down there, I it was in the back of my mind, but I hadn't really thought about it. I knew it was okay. It's winter down there. Surely there's some water somewhere, and then there's not. Like
No.
here in the summertime, in the heaviest drought that North Idaho has, or that the Northwest has, there's creeks that run 365 days,
Right.
24/7. So water's easy to get, and you don't have to carry a ton of water on the motorcycle. But down where you live, obviously, water is the lifeline of humans. You have to be prepared for that. So
100%. Well, let me
let's talk
even
about that. Yeah.
let me even break it down into the whole worldview that I was talking about at the beginning. The only reason why Phoenix exists is because we're able to pipe water from the Hoover Dam in, dude, I don't even know how many. I probably look it up. I want to say there's like 60 or more, maybe 70, and don't quote me on that, I could be saying that wrong, of reservoirs. We have man-made lakes here in the state just because we couldn't exist without those modern feats of engineering that are just phenomenal, right? So people
Right.
forget about that. And I'm in the low-lying areas of Arizona, in the valley. That's what I call it, the valley. There's no water naturally that occurs out here, right? So when I'm carrying it, I'm thinking, how many days? What's the amount of time? And I know, I can use one of my camelbacks for one day, and I'll be really good. Was that like 100 liters? I don't remember.
100, yeah, 100
Um,
ounces or so.
or 100 ounces, yeah. So, that's like priority one. Even though it was wintertime and I'm not seeing 118 degrees, which we do see during the summer, you have 0% humidity at the same time, right?
Right. And when you're
So,
riding sand washes and stuff like that, you're going to be sweating no
bro,
matter if it's
100%.
60 degrees or not, because we were both pretty wet after that trip.
Yep. Right. So water, I think, for me, being a desert ride is like, okay, that's like, how do I work that out? So to kind of give that answer, I have an who is it? Mosko Moto tank bag that can actually carry
Hmm.
the 100 ounces. Then I can mount it up there with the mouthpiece, and actually while I ride, drink that. But I also have the ability to take that off, put it on my back, or wear like a Wolf Enduro, chest rig with the exact same amount of water there. And
Right.
then as a supplement, we ended up using this for coffee the next morning. Remember, I had a Jeep flask, or it was like a stainless steel big
Like a
bottle that fits into my
hydro
bag.
flask. Yeah.
Yeah. And those three things, I could have done 2 days, 3 days, I think, maybe 3 days, maybe not,
Depending on the heat. Yeah.
depending on the heat. But yeah,
Which
that's
which
definitely
that
one
was
of the
another thing,
things.
right? It was like 65 degrees in the daytime, and then it got down at night to like 31 degrees. It's
Bro,
a
it was
30
cold.
30 plus degree
Hmm.
temperature swing, which you don't see in a lot
Hmm.
of other places. So you just have to kind of be prepared for both, not only the heat, but you need to be prepared for cold at night. So,
That's the thing.
which, yeah, so that's your water. We were able to bring some food out there. Mountain houses are always a great option, but we actually cooked steaks that night. We were able to bring,
Yeah.
go to the store on the way out and be able to bring steaks. That's not always going to be the option. So mountain house is a good way so that covers your food, your water. For shelter, we discussed this as well. There's two camps usually when it comes to living off a motorcycle. There's
Hmm.
your tent guys, we'll call it tent, bivy, lean to, ground sleepers, and then there's your hammock people. Hammocks don't work in the desert. There was not two cactuses close enough to tie a hammock to, and nor would I want to use the motorcycles as a
No,
sturdy
definitely not.
base. Yeah. So
Actually, I have a
um,
story on that.
let's hear it.
Yeah. So motorcycles, and even people like using tarps off them, um, never really was comfortable with that idea, although you can. And this is, region dependent. But the last time we did some training, actually, it was for a TV show at Spanish Fork, Utah. Um, there was a herd of cattle actually on the property that we were staying at. And for some reason, one of them got it in their head. I'm talking about the cows, to like at 4 in the morning come up to one of the girls. It was a Tacoma, and started like scratching its back on the Tacoma, which her rooftop tent was, and it freaked her out because she wakes up, 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, like what's moving, and lo and behold, it's an animal who's really not,
Yeah.
considering anything other than I'm just going to scratch this itch or whatever. And
Right.
the thing that was scary is it was also doing it. They had some dirt bikes there, and I can only imagine the damage that would cause if that bike falls over on top of you while you're asleep, So
Right.
I don't know. You call it a fluke. I never considered anything like that
No.
again. But that's this way kind of some of the lessons you learn just by going out and doing it. So I'm glad
Well,
you gave the amount of time you've done it.
a lot of these, I mean, I've had cows in camp a ton because a lot of these national forest lands and BLM lands are leased by ranchers who free range cattle on them. So I was actually kind of surprised that there was cattle in the desert where we were camping, but that's the same. It's the same thing we have up here. There's this thick, lush forest in the mountains. You'll be at 8,000 feet and you'll have cows come into your camp. I mean, it's crazy. You'll have moo cow, and then you'll have cow elk, or you'll have cow moose or whatever. So
moose, like your last video or whatever
video. They get hung up in some guidelines or whatever for your tarp or for your hammock. That's a bad situation. I mean, again, it would be a fluke situation, but I prefer the tent mainly because for a fact that you will be able to set that thing up just about anywhere.
Oh man, 100%. I've done hammock backpacking like on one trip to have a super here. It's gorgeous. Like if you're at all interested in backpacking, it's like a bucket list trip. It goes through some of the Navajo res. It is all Navajo, or not a Navajo res. It is a reservation, and it gives you, it leaves you kind of exposed. So there's a ton of raccoons there. So my wife and I, mainly my wife, like battled with these raccoons all night because we were in hammocks. And I'll never do it again. It's just one of those things where I was like, I'm going to avoid all that. I mean, literally, you're reclined back in this hammock and you feel little hands.
This raccoon's trying to join you.
Wow. Like flash my light, and it's like, oh shit! And it's like little hands, little black hands, like
little black. That's funny.
Gotcha. Never again. So I prefer tents for shelter. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and then a lot of people, their argument is that, well, the tent's always going to be bigger and heavier. Well, the tent that I carry from Big Agnes, the bike packing tent. I mean, it's can't even get it on camera. Mm-hmm. It's like it's 12 or 13 inches long, about this big around, and dude, it's a full ground fly tent, rain fly, poles, everything, and it's a 3-season tent. I mean, it doesn't have an insulating layer, but at 30 degrees, I was totally comfortable. I don't know if I'd really want to sleep. I've been down to 20 in that. Would I want to do that every day? No, but it's fine. It works. Yeah. So that's food, water, shelter. The next thing that you would like to have with you is some type of sleeping pad.
Yeah.
There's a million out there that are a good option. The one that you had was the Nemo, right?
I have a Nemo. I forget the brand of the other one. It's a hunting brand. You remember?
Climate, wasn't it?
Yes.
Was it Climate?
And yeah. Yep. And that one is a 3-season. My Nemo is a 4-season, but like the Nemo doubles in size. So depending on how my loadout is, I'll use the Nemo. As a matter of fact, I got that one from an overlanding trip that I did with History Channel A&E. It was part of our loadout that they gave us. We did 7 days, and I was at the rim of the Grand Canyon. We went to Kanab, Utah, and the Coral Pink Sand Dunes, and I slept in that thing up until about 29 degrees, 30 degrees.
Yeah,
but
dude, you've done some awesome trips.
Yeah. Super privileged, bro. I always like to throw in the trips because it gives a basis for understanding. One of the things that I think you talk about this all the time is that people will comment on certain things that we're doing and have never camped in their life, and it's just all this theory and don't know.
Or they've done it once or twice, and all of a sudden they're frozen.
Yeah, and we're not doing it right because the bike weighs too much or whatever that is.
Whatever.
But if and this is why, honestly, why we brought you to us to learn from you is because of the amount of times that you've done it. But I use the Climate because it's a 3-season and it's super small, dude. It was the same size as like a beer can when it goes down. But enough insulation from the ground to where that cold, temperature isn't transferring through the pad and freezing me. So it worked really well.
And I kind of go a little bit on the opposite direction. I use a Big Agnes Coeur, which that's a 4-inch thick mattress. It's 30 inches wide by 78, I think, inches long. And that's just, I'm willing to to sacrifice the packing space. It still doesn't weigh that much in the big scheme
Mm-hmm.
of things, but I'm willing to sacrifice the packing space to be, and that's a 4-season insulated. It's
Mm-hmm.
got a high R value, works great in the summertime, but also works really good in that cold weather. And I'm a side sleeper, so
Oh
dude,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That
I
matters.
can lay, I can lay on that thing on my side and still not touch the ground, which it's the only one I've ever used. Only one I've ever
Yeah.
used where I don't touch the ground. So, and just from like, military, football, law enforcement injuries, like I can't lay very long in one
Age.
spot. So yeah, age, right? Being 40, which is still young, right? So from that alone, I think we talked about this too. For when you're going to be on a trip for multiple days, the one thing that I will sacrifice over anything else is sleep, because
100%, bro.
that is the thing that is going to make the trip one more enjoyable, but it's also going to keep you your mindset
Yeah.
right, to where you're not foggy or cloudy when you're
Mm-hmm.
doing this technical writing. Because let's be honest, it only takes a little mistake or a little bit of not paying attention to what's going on to have a catastrophic injury that not only will end your trip, but might put you
Yeah.
in a helicopter going to the hospital. So
Yeah.
uh
100%.
I like to get good quality sleep when I'm out there. Just it's a safety thing, I guess, at the end of the day. So anyway, so yeah, that air mattress, I'll leave that down in the links below. All this gear that we've talked about will be in the
Yeah.
links below for you guys to check out. But the next thing moving from that was sleeping bag. I use a quilt, use a sleeping bag. I mean, that's what, there's really no, I don't see real, you were super comfortable in yours. I was comfortable in
Yeah.
mine. That's really just going to be a personal preference. And
Yeah.
then one thing that you didn't have that I had was a pillow.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And you survived, but again, it wasn't, you probably didn't get the best sleep from what we were talked about at the time. Like you didn't have the
Yeah.
most restful sleep that night. Whereas I used a inflatable memory foam pillow that packs down real small, and
Yeah. Your system
it's like
looks Gucci, man.
sleeping at home. It is Gucci, and
Yeah.
but again, it wouldn't be that way if I just started yesterday.
Right.
I've been moto camping, shoot, probably since 2007. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got almost 20 years of doing it, with going from using military gear that was issued to me that I was double using, on government's dime. Hey, I had it in my closet, might as well
Yeah.
use it, right? So,
Exactly.
but then you come
What's
to find
important?
out that, yeah, it just that doesn't do as well as what, if you're looking for good gear, use ultralight backpacking gear. That's really,
Perfect example, and that's got a lot to do. Like even my choices for that last trip had a lot to do with I was running the Reckless 40. So I made certain changes based on how much space I had and the amount of time we're going to be out there. I knew, to kind of talk about the pillow, I knew it was I'm a face sleeper, and typically
yeah.
I'll just like hug like my jacket or something, and I'm good. But if I was going to stay longer, man, I would love to get that memory foam pillow that you had, because that was really nice.
And it is all bike dependent, right? If you're on a 500 EXC KTM, or you're on a GS 1250 Adventure, obviously the the loadout is going to be different.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
can carry more weight. Not that you should carry a ton of weight on the GS, because the bike, no matter what bike it is, the more weight you add to it, it's just going to handle different.
Yeah.
But you can't go and put a Reckless 80 on a five. I suppose you could. I wouldn't recommend putting a Mosko Moto Reckless 80 on the 500 EXC or a 450 or anything like that, because it's just going to be too big, too bulky for that bike.
When I
And
ran the
if you
300, remember?
right, and if you have the space, yeah, that's right. Yeah, your 300 rally, you ran the 40
Hmm.
liter, and that 40 liter fits that bike like it should. It seems like
Hmm.
that's what it's made for. Now, granted, if you were running the 500 and you used your Reckless 10, it might change a little bit what you're going to be packing. But at the
Right.
same time, that's not a bike that you're going to be using for a multi-day camping trip. You could, but
Exactly.
you're only going to be doing it for maybe 2-3 days before it's not going to be that fun anymore.
Right.
Or
Right.
you run out of supplies or whatever that may be. I mean, some people dig that
What
kind
is
of
your
stuff.
mission? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all mission
Yeah.
dependent on what vehicle. I can take my GS or my Africa Twin or even that T7 and or your Aprilia, any adventure bike that's
Hmm.
marketed that way, you could take those bikes. I mean, you can do it with a dual sport too, I suppose, but you can live off those indefinitely if you had to. I mean, there's guys
Yeah.
who take the GS and they travel for a
Yeah.
year or more,
100%.
going all over the world, and that's really all I
Yeah.
need. So anyway, I think we're kind of getting off on this. I could talk about that stuff forever.
I know, right?
I enjoy that, but um, just kind of wrapping it up. I, if you're if you're curious about Fieldcraft Survival and what they're about, there's a ton of there's their Instagram, there's the YouTube page, there's the app, there's all kinds of things that are educational that you can learn from. And if you're looking for a reason to go camping and you need to tell your wife why you need to go do moto camping, it's because you're practicing for the worst case scenario to
Exactly.
keep your family safe. So
100%.
I mean, like, at the end of the day, that is the best way to kind of prepare yourself, your family, your gear, everything that you have is to go out and practice that. And the only way to do that is
100%, man.
to go out on these trips and see what works and what doesn't. And at the same time, it's pretty damn fun. So,
Yeah, dude.
um,
100%.
so as far as the camping gear goes, I think we kind of have that covered. But two things that people may not think of is when you're out on these trips or out in the wilderness, or up in the mountains in Idaho, or even in the desert, there's a couple of things that, one, are going to keep you safe or at least prepared for maybe the worst case scenario. And one of those would be you get injured or you get hurt. Having a proper medical kit would be something that it's a must. Like, don't leave home without it, right? So what do you carry on your person or on your motorcycle whenever you go out on these trips?
Well, I like that you said that on your person, because that is like the square one. I've used a reference for Dakar. I've seen a lot of the Dakar guys putting med kits like behind their windscreen, or somewhere on the bike, and those dudes are doing sometimes triple digit speeds sustained. So on your person provides you with a challenge, and when it comes to what you carry. So when we look at the numbers, and when we look at first responders, which I do have in our staff at Fieldcraft Survival, a lot of the things that you'll see in terms of injuries, and even on a minor scale, but also it could be pretty extreme, injury, is your long limbs, right? So that's your arms and your legs. You're exposed when you're sitting on a motorcycle to that. So a good first line of defense would be obviously the right pants or gear. But to address, let's say, a traumatic event, you need to be able to stabilize said injury. Like if you got a broken ankle or wrist or whatever, you still have to use those pieces to extract yourself if it's not available. So a good way to not only prevent more injury, but to stabilize the area would be like a sand splint or something moldable.
Mhm.
So I actually have one of those in my Wolf Enduro pack right here, just
Right.
folded around the next piece. I don't know if you want to talk more about that
Well, and that's the
piece
thing
of kit,
too,
but
is that I think there's a lot of people out there who just like, oh, I can't ride with a backpack, or I can't ride with a vest or whatever. But in the event that you get, well, most of the time, almost every time you have a decent off on the motorcycle, you're not going to be with the motorcycle anymore. So that life-saving equipment, that medical first aid gear that you have, if it's not on you in some way, shape, or form, it doesn't do you any good, right? So
mm,
the SAM splint, for instance, right? If it's not in a backpack or anything to brace, because if you break your tibia, fibia, like we've dealt with recently with Chad, who in the last episode,
he's not
uh,
walking back to his bike.
he's not walking back, or he would have a hell of a time even getting back to the motorcycle if he had to crawl, just because that foot was just,
Mm,
wasn't going to have it, right? So you need to be
mm,
able to stabilize that there before you move yourself, if you're by yourself. I
yep.
mean, if you're with people, even if you're with people, it really has the it's nice to be, hey, I have a SAM splint in my backpack, and not like, hey, I have a SAM splint somewhere in my reckless 80, and then they have to go pull all your shit out and try to find it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
And I
that, and
mean,
then tourniquet, right? That's another big one.
100%.
I'm probably jumping ahead of you, but yeah,
Well,
what are your
I
thoughts
think
on
I
that?
even kind of started it wrong, because there's an algorithm that we go through, right? It's the March algorithm, and MARCH is the acronym. And when you go through those stuff for a major incident, massive hemorrhaging, the M is the first thing that you look at. So you're right. I mean, I just pulled out randomly the SAM splint, but a tourniquet will address a massive hemorrhaging, and just like the name describes, you're talking lots of bright blood everywhere. You've got some kind of femoral bleed or something. God forbid you lost the foot or it came apart. You need to be able to stop and address that. So there's a couple ways, but the best is with a $29, $39 piece of equipment called a cat's tourniquet or a soft tee.
Yeah.
And you can easily deploy that and stop that and address that life-ending injury right then and there.
Yeah. And then like all of this equipment, right? Practice with it. Like you sit there, put it on with one arm, put it on with, try not to move your leg. Because in the event that, oh, I've got my tourniquet in my chest rig, I'm bleeding out. Let me take it out of the wrapper. That's seconds that literally matter at this point. And again, I'm not like trying to spread fear on people, but
right.
Based off my training and experience that I've had in both military and law enforcement, when it's time for a tourniquet, the seconds count. And if you don't know how to apply it, or at least being familiar with it, you could literally die from not having that knowledge. So
absolutely,
I carry one in my chest rig all the time, on whether I'm using the Mosko bag or I'm using the Wolf Enduro bag. It's right there within arm's reach, either for me to apply or my buddy to apply to, if in the event that I need it.
Yeah. And then after that, it would just be, a trauma kit or an IFAC or something. We sell those at Fieldcraft Survival. If you guys don't know where to get started, it's a good place to look on our website. But it'll address, any kind of, let's say, penetrating injury. In our last trip, I got a bug in my helmet. It actually made me go into one of the trees. So I could have gotten a penetrating wound by something like that. I mean, those are all things that could potentially happen,
or baby bugs in your ear. Oh, monsters.
God. Yeah. So, a med kit, tourniquet, SAM splint, those are all really great things to have on you, in the event of an emergency.
And then lastly, kind of like I hit on in the last episode too with Chad, an inreach, having something that is going to be able to reach out when it's not available by cell phone or radio, right? Having that inreach that, minimum $11 a month, right? And again, like I mentioned before, having the insurance, with confidence that you can push that button, the cavalry will be there. And again, as long as you can stabilize the injury, if you're hemorrhaging or anything like that, you're going to get out of there and you're going to be okay. So having that in the back of your mind is a huge mental crutch to have in the worst case scenario. So
100%.
So then the next thing would be protection. So when I talk about protection, I'm not talking about like having I'm not talking about wearing the right. Where my mind went for a second. I'm not talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not talking about having a cage around you when you're riding or wearing the proper gear. I'm talking about having the ability to protect yourself whenever you're at camp or just out on the motorcycle in general. And some of the ways that we do that, and depending on your state and the laws and stuff that you have, it's firearms. I carry a pistol with me, not 24/7, but on all my trips. And I know that, in the event that I need it, it's going to be readily available. And again, I carry that in my chest rig, so it's easily to get to if I'm with the bike or not. But depending on your state, bear spray, another good one to have. If I spray you with bear spray, you're not going to mess with me. It's just as bad as pepper spray, if not worse. So,
not worse.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it just, it becomes another issue of how do I carry, and I feel like I get that question a lot. Do you carry? I'm like, well, yeah, obviously, but how? And there are some products like what we discussed. Even the backpack with the water in it has an area there that you can safely do that. At Fieldcraft Survival, we actually do have an offering. We call it the backcountry carrier. That's probably better suited for like day rides rather than the long stuff that we're doing. But it does have provisions already built around that. And this is coming from um, the security background of Fieldcraft Survival, not mine. I'm more of the behavioral health side. in my, career. But security is always the top priority when it comes to like the pillars we discussed, right? If you can't secure the stuff that you have in an emergency, then it becomes someone else's and you have nothing. So when you prioritize that, it becomes not a chore, but it becomes necessary to be creative in that sense. So I always carry,
Yeah.
a small Glock or whatever. Yeah.
And I get that comment sometimes. Like I've some of my camping videos, I'll have my pistol sitting there on a log or whatever, and people ask me, or they'll say to me that that's not going to do anything if a bear attacks you. Maybe not. It'll slow it down for sure. But here's the deal, guys. I'm not carrying a freaking shotgun. I'm not going to carry
Right.
a short barrel rifle or an AR or something like that on my motorcycle. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So at the end of the day, I'm gonna carry what is gonna potentially have the best advantage in my
Right.
situation. So like a 10 mil
So
or whatever caliber it is. Let's jump to that really quick. I saw a thing the other day that I'm not sure how old that this article was, but the largest bear killed in Alaska, grizzly killed in Alaska for self-defense was actually by a 22 pistol. And
wow.
it was by like a 16 or 15-year-old girl. So we can
That's
talk
awesome.
we can talk calibers all day, but at the end of the day, one well-placed shot is all you need.
Exactly.
So
Well, that's the issue with that statement. Like, it's not going to do anything. Bear says who? Like what's the alternative? I guess I just die. Like, I don't
right.
understand that defeatist mentality. Like, shot placement is everything. You clearly aren't a hunter. I mean, you've seen us and people since the beginning of time dropping animals with sticks and stones. It's like, get out of here with that nonsense.
I
I'm
know. Give
going
me
to protect myself and mine,
a fixed blade knife at the minimum, right? Like if
bro.
I a freaking 6-inch fixed blade knife, if I'm getting attacked by a bear, dude, I'm gonna go
Right.
out. I'm gonna go out. I mean, if I die, I'm gonna go out freaking slashing, dude.
Exactly.
So anyway, and that's the thing. Where I live, we've got a lot of bear, we've got things like that. But I have never in the years that I've camped up here, I've never had any issues. I've only had issues with moose, funny enough. I've never had
That's
issues with
hilarious.
bear. So it's just a matter of like knowing your environment.
Yeah.
Don't camp in your tent with all your food. I mean, just do things like that to protect yourself. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
do. You and I both get that question all the time. Do you
Yeah.
carry while you're riding or while you're overlanding? And the answer is yes. So
Yeah.
whatever works for you and you feel comfortable with carrying, do that as long as you have something.
100%.
So well, man, I think we've talked about all we can as far as preparedness. Again, Fieldcraft Survival is a great tool, a great resource to be able to go on and check out all of the things they offer. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, as we kind of, it's cool that this is the third episode, because you're, building this community, which is the foundation for everything that we're doing. There are no plausible solutions for survival in any situation without other people,
Yeah.
even just from like a behavioral health standpoint, we were designed to have others. But when you need resources, when you need security, when you need help, which you most definitely will in disaster or man-made or not, the community's there. So I just appreciate, case in point, that you're doing this and the information is out. And for those of you guys watching, it is my intent that we continue to build it, whether it's for craft or not, whether it's
Right.
backcountry, whether it's Mosko, whoever. Like, it doesn't matter where you came from or what you do. If you want to get on two wheels, let's do it. But with that being said, tap into our resources, reach out. Me and Kyle are always available to answer questions, or maybe we didn't get something right. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to go on more trips, and do that stuff. But that's what this is all about: is community and you guys.
Yeah, the whole point of these podcasts are really just to bring people like you on that may not necessarily have you have a lot of knowledge in the overlanding and in the preparedness space, and it's to share your knowledge with others who may not have that knowledge. So I sure as hell don't have all the answers, so that's why it's not just me on here talking, for 45 plus minutes. I'm trying to bring people on who have the knowledge that can help this community, but also build another community or build more of this community, and kind of spread the word, spread the knowledge, spread the love. So
Yes, sir.
um, Anyway, man, I really appreciate. Where can people who are
Pleasure.
listening to this, or whoever's watching this, where can they find you at?
Oh, they can find me on Instagram. My name is Mike.a.Hernandez across Instagram and YouTube. Hernandez Garage is my other Instagram. You can find me on fieldcraftsurvival.com. Any of those sources. You know what, dude? And I'm probably going to have to start what's it called? A TikTok. And I hate to say that because I don't like it, but we're like trying to expand. Like I was talking about community being the center. We have to reach the community, but I don't have that yet. But yeah, find me on those sources.
I'm not there yet either. Yeah.
Right. DM me and let's build this community.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time. And yeah, if you guys have any questions at all, leave them down in the comments below. Both me and Mike will be kind of watching the comments in this video, and we'll answer the best we can. But yeah, man, have a great day, and we'll see you here on the next one, man. Peace.
Likewise, brother.